Welcome back, folks. Hope you're enjoying coverage of this event so far. My name is Max Kahn, and joining me here today, Andy Boswell. Andy, how's it going?
Hey, dude, I'm doing great. How about you?
Great. So we're just here spending some time in between rounds to talk about you. You're a member of TeamNRG, and we just want to get the audience to know you a little better. So we're just going to get started with a couple of quick questions about you and Magic. So how long have you been playing Magic, and who taught you how to play?
So, I started playing Magic when Revised was first being phased out and Ice Age was the new set. So, when I started, dual lands from Revised were like $10. So, pretty far back. And the person who taught me to play was my best friend Ian Duke, who's current R&D member of Wizard of the Coast, and also the older brother of Reed Duke, who I know a lot of people know too.
So you're from Sugarloaf, New York, which is the home
Yeah.
of Reed Duke and Ian Duke. What is it
Yep.
like growing up with them as your neighbors, essentially?
Well, I mean, honestly, growing up with them wasn't really anything odd in any way. I mean, they were just, my friends. But when we were growing up, it was a really, really small town, and we hung out basically every single day, and all we would do is play games. So Ian, and in particular, was always really, 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 really good at games, and that was something that I always noticed, but games were just a really big part of our life, and we just did a lot of stuff that all the other normal kids would play. I will say one thing though is that the Duke household is vicious at a couple games in particular, such as Scrabble. They're really, really, really good at Scrabble, like insane, like the whole family. But yeah, I mean they have a pretty gaming focused family, I guess, in certain ways. Like Ian and Reed's older sister was on Jeopardy once,
Really?
and yeah, and one of their cousins who would come back and hang out like for the holidays every year. He's like a professional poker player, so I guess you could say that it was a little different in that we maybe focused on playing games a little more than other people, but I think generally people growing up just play a lot of games in general. So I thought it was pretty normal.
Interesting. Wow. So, what's your favorite Magic-related story? Whether that's been at an event you've been at or an event you've heard, just what's your favorite Magic story in general?
Favorite Magic story. Let's see. I certainly have quite a few. Well, since we're on the topic of Ian,
Sure.
one of my favorite stories is he was at a PTQ, and this is like way, way back in the day. And he's up against some guy, and they finish the first game, and Ian pulls out his sideboard and he starts sideboarding or whatever. And he sees this other guy like lean over behind him, grab his trade binder, throw it on the table, and start flipping through the pages and pulling cards out. And 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 this guy pulls out like 30 cards from his trade binder, and Ian sees them like, taking cards out of his deck, unsleeving them, and like, sleeving the cards that he just took out of his binder. And Ian's like, "What are you doing?" The guy's like, "Well, I'm sideboarding, obviously." He, he's just like, "Judge."
Yep.
So that's on the top of Ian. That's one of my favorite stories. But I guess related to me, probably my favorite story is. So one other pretty funny story is when I was playing in Dublin. It was my first pro tour, and the night before the event started, this guy Uri Peleg, who was staying and testing with us, came up to me, and he's from Israel,
Hmm.
and he goes to me, "Hey, I think there's a good mono blue deck that some people are going to be playing at this pro tour." And I was like, "A mono blue deck?" And this was like
Of course,
when
Pro
the
Tour Theros with Mono Blue Devotion,
yeah,
right?
being the breakout deck. And I'm like, that sounds pretty interesting. Could you tell me what kind of cards they're playing? And he's like, "Well, I don't know. So they were showing me it a little bit, and some of the cards look pretty weak. Like they're playing Cloudfin Raptor and Judge's Familiar." And I'm like, dude, those cards are awful. There's no way that this is a deck. Like, don't even worry about it. I mean, just like don't sweat it or whatever. And then sure enough, it was like the breakout deck of the
Yeah.
format or whatever. So
First,
that's
second
another good
place, and I
story.
think another copy in the top 8 to define
Yeah,
standard for the next year.
yeah, exactly.
Wow. So recently you had a stint on the SCG coverage team at the Open in Charlotte. What was that like, and what are your big takeaways from doing coverage in an event of that size?
Sure. So doing coverage was really, really fun. It was also absolutely brutal.
Hmm.
It was one of the hardest things that I think I've ever done. I've had a lot of situations where I've had to be on for a whole weekend, whether it's playing in a Magic tournament or doing craft fairs, selling pottery, stuff like that. But doing coverage was unlike any of those things, and it was just way, way harder than I expected. I had a great time doing it. It certainly made me realize that I have a lot of ways to improve my public speaking and my ability to articulate things. But it was just really, really fun, really positive experience. I'm going to be able to do it again at the end of February for the Philadelphia Open. That's going to be Legacy. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Don't have anything scheduled after that, but I would like to do more commentary because I think it's pretty sweet. Also, commentary is just so important for the game. Like, if you want to see Magic grow, one of the most important things is just having a good Twitch stream. And the comment your audience will hear more of the commentators than they will of the players, essentially. So in certain ways, like, I think that commentators are one of the most important things for growing Magic as a game. And I love Magic, so I just want to see it grow. So it makes sense for me to devote some energy into trying to make it so that there's good commentary.
And you do a great job, so I'm glad that you're going to say that you're going to do it more.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I got a lot of positive feedback. I feel like I have a lot of room to improve, but I appreciate the encouragement.
Sure. So one of the things that is my personal favorite question to ask these players is, what's one piece of advice you think all Magic players need to hear? Whether it's a motto that you live by or something that specifically related to Magic, what's one thing that you think that Magic players need to know?
So that's a good question. I would say, generally speaking, Magic players are a pretty smart group of people. Certainly, one of the reasons why I like being involved in the Magic community is everyone is pretty good at just thinking things through and being rational. I think one of the places that Magic players can falter is that they think there's always one right answer for a question, and I feel like that's usually true for a lot of people who are kind of mid-tier and below that. But as soon as you get to the absolute elite people of anything, whether it's poker, Magic, entrepreneurship, just literally every single thing that you can treat as a competition, if you look at people who do that sort of stuff at the highest level, you will frequently have people who are faced with the same problem and approach it in different ways. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that it's so common for Magic players to get used to thinking, well, there's one right answer and I'll figure it out. And while that is mostly true, it's not completely true when you're talking about like the super, super high levels. And you need to give people a little more space at times to sort of be themselves and less fit into the mold of a quote unquote good player.
Sure. So what's your favorite part about being on Team NRG?
So my favorite thing about being on Team NRG is, that's a good question. I'm kind of a newer member. I was only picked up at the end of last year, and it's certainly been nice to hang out with the guys for the couple of tournaments that I got to go to where they were also there. I would say I would say probably the nicest thing about being on a team is just having a general support system. It's like whether it's borrowing cards or figuring out someone to share a hotel with or whatever. Generally speaking, the only two people I go to tournaments with, or like my two travel companions, are either Reed Duke or Gerard Fabiano. I don't really travel with anyone else, and so if I want to go somewhere and neither of them want to go, it's nice to have a larger network of people where I can, sort of know that I'm going to be able to hang around, go to dinner, all that stuff.
All right, so the last question we have for you is kind of like a community building one. It's what are some misconceptions you think that non-Magic players have about the game, and how would you try to fix those misconceptions to get more people into the game?
I don't know. That's a tough question for me to answer because basically everyone I know plays Magic. I don't actually know that many people who don't play at this point. Over over the years of playing Magic, I've slowly pruned the people out that don't play Magic. I
Hmm.
think I think that the best answer I can give is that one of the big misconceptions is that it's expensive to get into.
Sure.
And while buying a legacy or modern deck is obviously expensive, or even just buying a standard deck right off the bat can be expensive. The way that I got more seriously into Magic was essentially by just drafting a lot at my local FNM, and not only was that super fun, it also helped me get to know all the people in my immediate area. And for me, that was the best way to get involved in Magic because by drafting a lot, you just draft a bunch of cards, and it's a great way to build a collection. So I think that for me, one of the misconceptions that I've noticed is people think it's pretty expensive to get into Magic. And I would say the best thing you can do to get into Magic is just draft a lot at your local store. And that is, at least in my opinion, fairly cost effective. Uh, it's a great way to not only build your collection but get familiarity with a lot of the cards, uh,
Sure.
and
That's really
uh,
important.
yeah, and also once you get to know people, you can just borrow cards. Like there's so many times people use card availability as an issue for what decks they're going to play,
Hmm.
and buy like buying a new deck every weekend is just crazy. You should just find a circle of friends and just borrow cards from each other. So I mean that's how it was for me, Farron, Reed, and or so me, Reed, Ian, and also our other friend Farron. When we were growing up, we basically just had one big collection of cards
Hmm.
that we all essentially shared. Uh, and I think more people should do that sort of stuff when they're especially when they're starting out.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for spending the time sitting down and interviewing us.
Yeah.
If you would like to contact Andy, you can contact him on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
So my Twitter handle is Kowlin Tiger, and just quick little story about the word Kowlin. So essentially, it's the root word for porcelain, and
Sure.
porcelain is like my primary way of working. So I'm a potter.
Great. So I'm on Twitter at MaxPlaysMTG if you want to contact me. Other than that, we hope you enjoy this interview with Team NRG member Andy Boswell, and stay tuned for Nerd Rage Gaming Live for more information.